Hey guys, I'm RNG Gamer. I play all my games randomly. Welcome to my game room. I'm so happy to have you here. I have 7 games that I've randomly finished recently, and I can't wait to share them with you. Included is like a $700 Holy Grail game that a lot of you have been like clamoring for me to review. Also, if you can tell, I finally got a camera. I have a camera just for the channel, so I hope things look better. I'm still learning how to use it. Send me any tips if you can. I don't know what I'm doing, but let's dive right into these games. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're really trying to push towards 500 subscribers. I'd love to hit it this week sometime. And like that video, click the bell notification, and leave a comment. I love talking to you guys. Let's get to it. So first up, we have a game that got a little bit of hype when it came out. It was really riding on that Dark Souls sort of rip-off wave that everybody was doing, where everybody was copying Dark Souls. This is a 2D version of that, and it's Salt and Sanctuary. Oh, look at that, man. The camera just focuses right away. It's so cool. Anyway, let's talk about it. So as you can see, I kept my copy sealed. I bought it on the PlayStation Network. I didn't want to open my copy and devalue it. And I was able to get it for like $5 or $6 on the PlayStation Network, which is fine. The story of it is nothing special. It's understated just like Dark Souls. But basically, you're just kind of trying to save the princess. And, you know, there were so many of these games for a while. And I really love the Dark Souls series. But I haven't been a huge fan of Souls-like games. So games that kind of like emulate or try to copy the Souls series. I think this is maybe the best one I've played, but you know, this is just 2D Dark Souls. I don't know what to tell you. You can see it. It's got that like dark aesthetic and the challenging combat, but it adds in some like 2D platforming and some more Metroidvania kind of style mechanics, which is kind of cool. You know, it's really just, it's 2D Dark Souls. It's got the, you know, this washed out kind of paper doll look that looks okay, but everything looks really samey over the course of the game, but it has that, you know, bleak aesthetic that everybody wants in the Souls games. The game follows like the basic Souls formula. You gain shards or souls or whatever from killing enemies and bosses, and you try to get to rest sites of grace or whatever to kind of temporarily save your game. It gives you a checkpoint, but when you die, you lose your souls unless you can get back to your body before dying again. And that's exactly the same here. Most of the items and weapons used in the game are like, they're just ripped straight from Dark Souls. And the real innovation in this game is that it tries to add in some 2D platforming and some sort of light Metroidvania components that I think kind of work at times, and other times they're very frustrating. The game it's wonky, and you guys have played Dark Souls, and you know that the platforming in that doesn't hold up very well. It doesn't hold up super well here. They tried to go for that feeling from the first Dark Souls game, where it's like this interconnected world that sort of loops back in on itself, where you know you're heading in one direction, fighting through a new area, and you come out the other end and realize that it's like looped back around to where you started. And it gives this sort of interconnected feel. The problem is that it's like 2D. So you end up with these like sprawling areas that loop back in on themselves, but it doesn't really make sense in a way, because the map being 2D has to be spread out so far. And the game really honestly needs a map. I don't like maps in Souls games, but this one needs one. Another issue is that there are no fog walls to show that you're walking up on a boss. So a lot of times you're just exploring, you're trying to find your way to the next side of grace or whatever they call it, you know, to save your game or level up, and you just walk into a boss fight and get annihilated. And I kept walking into them over and over and over, and it was extremely frustrating. On top of that, your Estus flasks that you use to heal yourself, they're just really slow in this game. And that's annoying. You know, you're trying to heal as quickly as you can during these tense boss fights, and your character like stops to take a drink and you just get smacked. And That's the other thing in this game that Dark Souls doesn't have. This game has like ragdoll knockback mechanics. So enemies will hit you and send you flying across the screen, and you can get like stun locked like this. You're like a ragdoll just flying around, and that's really annoying. But the Souls formula is really good, and just that alone carries this game. If that tells you anything about how good the Souls formula is. This game, even though it's just ripping off Souls, and it's not doing a better job, it's just kind of hanging in there, yet it still turns out to be a pretty decent game. It's really almost too similar to Dark Souls, but you know, the exploration and the combat strategies don't translate as well in 2D, in my opinion. And beating the bosses didn't feel really rewarding. You know, they swing their giant club, and like in Dark Souls, you can roll towards them, you can roll, you know, to the left, to the right, you can roll backwards, you can, you know, maneuver out of the way. In this, you know, you can roll left or right. Like, choose your poison. And I swear some of the boss attacks, I feel like, could not be avoided. You know, they just swept across the whole screen. But I was able to beat it, and I had a decent enough time with it. But I have to say, I was pretty glad when it was over. And although I think it's a good sort of 2D facsimile of the Souls games, it can't really hang in there with most of the ones from FromSoft. So in the end, how good was Salt and Sanctuary? I thought it was pretty decent for a Souls game, to tell you the truth. It did well. It did the best of any of these Souls-likes I've seen, but it can't hang in there with the mainline Souls games. So Salt and Sanctuary is like a 7 out of 10. It's good. It's pretty good. I would recommend it if you like challenging platformer games and you like that dark aesthetic from the Souls series. But if you don't like that and Dark Souls frustrates you, skip this one. Skip this one for sure. I feel like I talk about these games in every single video I do. I've been working through these. I bought this game on the Switch, and the game has so much input delay that it's like unplayable. So I was waiting for a better version to come out. So all the games from that compilation, while they are like knocked off the backlog, they're actually kind of in this weird limbo. I kind of pushed them to the side till this better version came out, and I'm replaying them in a playable form now. But it's from the Psycho Shooting Collection Volume 2. And this one is Samurai Aces, which they label as Sengoku Ace. And it's right there. See if it'll focus. There we go. Look at that. New camera for the win. For the win. Do people say that anymore? Is that like 12 years ago that was popular? Anyway, let's talk about it. So like I said, I played this on the Switch twice, and it was unplayable due to the input lag. But this is an arcade game from 1993, and it works the same as like the other Psycho games, really. This one's set in like a steampunk feudal Japan setting, with some kind of like horror aesthetics, which I really like. But the way it works, you have 6 characters, and you play through 7 stages. And the first 3 of the 7 stages are randomized from a choice of 4 stages. So there's like stage A, B, C, or D. And it will pick either like A for stage number 1, and then D for stage number 2, and then C for stage number 3. And you won't play B this time. And then the next time you play, it'll pick, you know, C first, and then B second, whatever. Which is fine, but the stages are not equally balanced. So if you draw like a bad order, you might get a really easy stage for your first one, and then the harder stage is stage 3, which is, you know, ramped up in difficulty. But it's fine. The graphics are really cool, you can see. And the setting is different, which I like. Unfortunately, the music, like most Psycho games, is pretty repetitive and boring. Like I said, it's the curse of the Psycho games. The music has never really set with me well. But what's really good about this game is that the levels are like pleasantly short. And this is a really good effort because, believe it or not, this is Psycho's first shoot 'em up, I think. Maybe it's their first game. And I think this is a really good effort for your first game. And it kind of set the groundwork for the other games and made that archetype that they follow. And, you know, kudos to them. They did a good job. As for the way the characters control, you have your like normal standard shot, and you can hold it down to charge it, to release a charge attack. And some of these are really beneficial. Some of them are like basically useless, but the charge attacks take forever to charge. I mean, forever. They're almost to the point where they're useless. You can get more of a damage output, you know, just doing your standard shot rather than holding down the charge button for like 5 seconds or whatever it takes. On top of that, this game has that garbage where as you power up, your power-ups wear off over time. So what happens is the power-up icons, they kind of drift down, and you have to keep gathering them to kind of add more to the timer of your power-ups. The problem is that the freaking power icons, they only come down to like the top half of the screen. So you have to move up to the top of the screen to chase them. And they're usually faster than the ship, so you're chasing them all around, and they like lead you to certain death. Like if you go up to the top of the screen to try to grab one, and you've got to grab them because you got to stay powered up. The game is designed for you to stay powered up all the way through. You know, you'll be chasing one up to the top of the screen and trying to grab it as you slowly follow it around, and an enemy will, you know, zoom in and blast you out of nowhere. The other problem is that these power-ups, a lot of times when they're released from the enemies, instead of like bouncing down towards you, they just bounce straight out of the top of the screen. So there could be an enemy that's like in the top 10% of the screen, and you kill them, and the freaking power-up like shoots up instead of down. So it even starts further away from you, which just exasperates the whole problem. Also, this game has 7 difficulty levels, just like all the Psycho games I've played, that range from the, you know, the insultingly termed monkey all the way up to like extremely hard. But the problem with this game is that there's not much difference between the 7 difficulty settings. In the other Psycho games, I could put it on monkey difficulty and like 1 credit cleared on my first try. Then I move up to the child difficulty, and I usually credit cleared on my first try. And then I get to easy. That maybe takes me 1 or 2 attempts, and then, you know, I can knock out normal in about a week or so. This one, on monkey difficulty, it is almost as hard as it is on the hardest difficulty. Like, I worked on monkey for like 2 weeks trying to get the 1 credit clear, and then on the same day after doing that, I was able to 1 credit clear it on very hard, which is, that is poorly balanced, and it makes it a really frustrating experience for somebody learning this game, because you can't really ramp up the difficulty. That being said, I think this is an okay effort. You know, it was their first game, and it's got some kinks in it that need to be ironed out. There are no training modes on any of these games, on these collections, which is frustrating. There's no save states, there's no way to go back and replay the levels or just the little part you want to work on. So I was struggling with the final boss on this, and I could get to like the last level without ever getting hit, and then I'd blow through all my lives on the last boss, just to have a chance, which was really annoying. Also, some of the trophies are bugged on this. I have all the trophies for this part of the collection for Samurai Aces, but the one for beating the game on like monkey difficulty, don't have it. I got the trophy for beating it on the hardest difficulty, but the one for beating it on the easiest difficulty doesn't unlock. And a lot of other people online are complaining about that as well, which is really annoying. Because I worked really hard to get that, and I wanted to get all the trophies for this game. But such is life. So how was Samurai Aces or Sengoku Ace? It's okay. It's a valiant first effort, I have to say. Not Psycho's best game, not their worst, but a decent enough game. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10 on this compilation. It's pretty good. Unplayable on the Switch, though. Really unplayable. It has the worst input lag of any of the games on the compilation. So if you're going to play it on emulator or the PCB, buy the arcade machine, or try out the PS4 version. Up next, we have a game that was in one of my recent pickups videos. I can't remember how much I paid for it. I got it at GameStop on clearance, and clearance games were half off. I only think I paid a couple bucks for it. And let me tell you, I hate this game. I hate it. And it's Just Die Already, Old People, Mayhem, Sandbox. I should have known right away from the title that I was not going to like this. So, what's the story? you are an old person and you're trying to knock random tasks off your bucket list. That's it. There's no story really. It's a sandbox and you just run around trying to get into mayhem, is the title says, the subtitle. It's just one of these like crappy physics games where you just grab stuff and like ragdoll all around, kind of like Octodad or what's that game? Goat Simulator. And I think the people that made Goat Simulator made this game. The graphics are bad. It looks like an early Xbox 360 game to me, and it kind of reminds me of like Sneak King, that like Burger King game on the Xbox 360 that's so bad. The music's not good. It tries to be whimsical and funny, but it doesn't work. Let me just tell you, this game, it just like hits all the pressure points of frustration and dislike for me. I hate objectiveless sandbox games. If you've ever watched the video, I thought it was one of my best videos, nobody watched it. It was my top 10 gaming sins, where I said, like, I need you to construct a story. If you're making a game or construct some sort of gameplay loop, don't just make a bunch of crap and give me tools and then just tell me to go make my own fun. Don't do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to, like, be dropped in this world with, like, random ramps and weapons and people and just, like, run around causing mayhem. That's not fun for me. And the objectives are things like get electrocuted 50 times, like get dismembered 20 times, drown 40 times. That's so boring. Just give me a path forward. Don't make me make my own fun. This game, I think it's designed for like teenage Twitch streamers to laugh and yell at the screen. That's all I can think of. That's like the only reason to play this game. And it just does not suit me. These games are not for me. Sorry guys, I don't have time to just screw around. When I play Grand Theft Auto, and I know so many people that play Grand Theft Auto and they're like, I just want to get the bazooka and run around and like shoot stuff. I never do that. Never once in Grand Theft Auto has it occurred to me to just goof around. I'm just like, we go from like story mission and side mission to the next one. Just like methodically like working our way through the whole experience. And I like that. And so this game, it does not suit me. I never laughed a single time or had a single moment of fun, and I played it for about 3 hours. So, man, this was not a fun experience. So, how was Just Die Already Old People Mayhem Sandbox? It's awful. It's so bad. It's like a 3 out of 10. All I can say about this game is that, like, it boots up and doesn't crash. That's it. You can play it. And there are some objectives you can do, like drown 40 times or, steal 50 cars or whatever it is. It's not even steal 50 cars. It's like die to a car 50 times. It's not quite a 2. To earn a 2, it has to, like, be so buggy it's unplayable. This is, like, buggy, but they leave it buggy for humor's sake. It's not unplayable. It's just not fun to play. And a 1 is like a game that won't boot up. So 3 is about as low as they usually get. To earn a 3 or lower is pretty hard for me. So this game is some special kind of terrible. Stay away from this unless you just like that kind of stuff. This next game is on a really cool compilation. It's a handheld game on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, which I've never played before, but I have it on this collection here. This is the Neo Geo Pocket Color Selection Volume 1, and the game is King of Fighters R2. So like I said, this was originally released on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, and I'm not great at fighting games, but I think the King of Fighters series is my favorite and probably the one I'm best at. I can kind of hold my own a little bit against people that play a fair amount of fighting games. When they have like no experience at King of Fighters. So me at my most skilled at like King of Fighters is their first time playing it. Anyway, this game has a little bit of a story. I think you have to stop some drug dealer who's like cloning people on a boat, maybe, and you're like fighting through, is it a tournament? I don't know, or you're just fighting the random people on the boat to get to him. It is just King of Fighters on a handheld. It plays just like you would expect. It has like a lot of the classic characters and like almost all of the moves from the other Neo Geo games, which is crazy. And they're pretty easy to pull off, even on like a Switch Pro controller. And there's also like this story mode where you fight solo and you unlock new skills, which is really cool, but it's challenging, it's tough. You pick, like most King of Fighters game, a team of 3, and the first person or the first side to get all 3 of their team knocked out loses. And as you can see, for a handheld game, I can't imagine what this would look like on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, but it looks fantastic. The animations are unbelievable. They look great even on the, you see me playing on the Switch here. The music's really great, super catchy, and this game is really fun in short bursts. I was able to beat it on like easy difficulty on my first try, and then, you know, it took me a few tries to beat it on normal, but I had a really good time with it, and I honestly think it could almost like hang in there with some of the Neo Geo games like proper, which is saying a lot. Like I said, I think this is the best handheld fighting game I've ever played. It's not quite as good as the Neo Geo games, but it's up there, man. It might be better than some of them. Anyway, if you like fighting games and you like this cute, like chibi look, and you like the King of Fighters, you gotta play this. This collection's really good, and this game was fantastic. So how was King of Fighters R2 on this collection? It was really good. I thought it was great. I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. There's a bunch more games. It looks like there's 10 games on this compilation, so I've got 9 more to go, and I think limited run games, I'm pretty sure I just pre-ordered like volume 2 of this, so I'm looking forward to it. Whoa, we're back. Sorry guys, while I was moving I accidentally like kicked the tripod and moved it, so I may not be in the same location I was before. I tried, I promise. Alright, this next game is a special treat. This is one of the rarest Game Gear games of all time. This is like a holy grail game, and not a lot of people know about it or have ever seen it. And if you're going for like a complete collection, this is one of the ones you've got to track down. But it's Arena Maze of Death. See if it'll focus there. There we go. Like I said, this is one of the rarest Game Gear games, and it's a console exclusive. This is the only way to play it. So you're playing as some guy, and you're trying to infiltrate this building or company called Astralnet to broadcast a tape of the corporation's evil doings or something, and reveal the truth to the rest of the world, I guess to make them rise up or something. And you can see it's like an isometric maze game, and you basically explore around to find key cards, you kill enemies while you're doing it. And I have to say, I would compare this, really, it's like an isometric Doom. Like the first Doom, it feels like that. These maze-like levels with enemies and, you know, key cards and, you know, secret teleporters and stuff like that. And for a Game Gear game, it looks really great. You know, it has this grim and dystopian feel to it, and, you know, it really evokes like a Terminator 2 vibe, which is cool. And the music is tense, and it's driving, and it really helps keep up the energy, but the music's not very catchy. So it is a good-looking package. However, the gameplay has some real issues with it, and it takes a little while to get the hang of the game flow. And it is pretty fun when you get into it, but let's talk about some of these issues. So, most of the enemies, after you kill them, they just respawn. Like, they'll respawn, not when you leave the room and come back, but like, maybe 2 seconds later. And that's really frustrating because your ammunition and your resources are limited. And you are constantly backtracking through these levels. I mean, you'll have to run to one side to hit a switch to open a door on the other, and then it takes you to a place where you have to get a key card to run back to the other side of the map, and then you go in a door there and hit a switch and you run back and forth. And the basic enemies take like, you know, 5 shots to kill, and their bullets are so fast that they're basically unavoidable. You need to know that the enemy's already going to be there, and just like the second 1 pixel of them appears on the screen, you dodge. You just move out of the way. Also, this game has some really tricky platforming on like moving rafts and some conveyor belts and stuff. And when you fall off, it's just instant death. And lives are limited in this. You know, and there's some place where you have to make these jumps to advance, and they can be really, really tricky. Fortunately, the game does give you a password system, but it's for like every 4 stages. So I think in the game, which is 16 or 20 levels or so, you get like 4 passwords total, which is not enough. It needs one for every stage. While I was really getting into the swing of this game, I got where I was pretty good at it, but the final stages are way too long and unfair. And the final stage, especially where you're like going through the corporate tower, it introduces like elevators, and you have to take elevators up multiple floors and hit switches on that floor to go down to the basement, to like turn a knob, to go up to the 3rd floor. And there's multiple elevators in different locations, and they don't go up to the same floors, they don't go up to the same areas of floors. So like if you go to the north elevator and you go up to the 3rd floor, you can only access the north side of the 3rd floor. So if you want to access the south side of the 3rd floor, you have to go to the other elevator on the south side of the building. But the problem is, there's nothing indicating that you have to do that. So you're just wandering around aimlessly forever with infinitely respawning enemies, but limited ammo. You don't have infinite ammo, and if you use up all the ammo that they provide, noted that you need to find and search for all this hidden ammo, right? It's not just laying out in the open usually. You can run out really quickly. And I have to say, the game really, in general, just gets less fun the more you play. It's designed to be played over and over and over again, so you can memorize everything. And I don't know that it's well suited to that. This feels more like, I mean, I don't want to memorize like mazes. You know, I like to memorize where the enemies are and stuff, but I want to explore. That's the whole point of mazes. That's the draw of a maze, is to explore, right? Not just like know how to solve it immediately. So I feel like they're kind of like shooting themselves in the foot, or the designers are. I played this game halfway through and was able to do fairly well at that. And then after that, it was just too much. And I was getting tired of playing the same levels. Like, you know, I had the password to get halfway through the game, but then I would play like 2 more stages, which can take 15 or 20 or 30 minutes each. And then I'd die, and I didn't want to redo those other stages again. So I cheated, guys. I used save states to get done with this game, just for you guys. I probably could have beaten it if I used like a walkthrough or something like that, or just had like 100 hours. But honestly, I didn't feel like it was worth putting in the 100 hours into it. You know, it's frustrating. It's very difficult. It's fun in small doses. But the 20 levels are a bit much, and those last levels are way too long. So it's not a perfect game, even if it is rare and valuable. So how is the Holy Grail game on the Game Gear Arena Maze of Death? Man, focus. Do it. Do it. Focus. There we go. It's focusing on like the guy's face on the cart instead of like the letters that you want to read. It's fine. I'd say it's like a 6 out of 10 good. If you're collecting for the Game Gear, you got to have it. And I've never really played a game like this on any other handheld. It looks pretty amazing, but it's just too tough and too long. So it's good. It's a 6 out of 10. It's a little bit better than mediocre, but not like a great game. Try it if you're able to pick it up somewhere cheap, but you won't ever find it anywhere cheap. You won't ever find it. I only came across it because I bought like an entire Game Gear collection from this woman who had almost finished the set. So there you go. All right, guys, it's the main event. $700 game, maybe more, around that or something like that. This is a Holy Grail game. A lot of people are looking for this. This is also a Gold Star game, meaning that I had to beat like a bunch of other games to earn a Gold Star so I could pick what I wanted to play. And this has been on the shelf for a couple of years, and I finally got around to playing it, and I finished it. And it's Rule of Rose on the PlayStation 2. Let's talk about it. All right, there's a lot of controversy behind Rule of Rose, and I have a lot of notes here. I don't know that I want to go over all this, but maybe I do. I'm sure you guys want to hear about it. People talk about this game, but I don't really know a lot of people that have played it. And this game is rare. It's pretty rare. I do see it around occasionally at conventions and stuff. And I bought mine at a store, you know, a retro game store. I didn't pay nearly $700 for it, but it wasn't cheap. But the claim to fame is that this game was like banned in multiple countries for condoning like underage lesbianism and violence against children. And so The underage lesbianism, I don't get that. It has some young girls that like hug and, you know, they kiss each other on the cheek and things like that, but they're just kind of, it's not anything you wouldn't see in a, you know, an elementary school with girls. So I don't know what the deal is with that. It does have some kind of uneasy children's violence in it, though. I will say that. So let's just dive in. You play as Jennifer, and you find yourself at this abandoned orphanage where this sort of like Lord of the Flies situation is taken over. And the kids there have developed this ruling system called the Aristocrat Club. And they basically make all the kids in the school compete in these scavenger hunts every month to be either rewarded or punished. And the gameplay style, while it looks like survival horror, and I guess in a way it is survival horror, it's really more of like a scavenger hunt. You wander around, you know, trying to find items to advance the story. And you have this dog named Brown. And you basically find an item and then let Brown sniff it, and he like leads you to the next item. And then you pick up that item and let him sniff that, and it leads you to the next item. And the whole map is just these like huge maze-like areas that I feel are intentionally obtuse and hard to navigate with. And it's hard to get around. And the map they give you is like the hottest of garbage. It's almost unreadable. And I really dislike it. Now you can see here from the game that the cutscenes look fantastic. The game looks really good. This is a PlayStation 2 game. The music's also incredible. It's all like a string quartet, and it's really well done. And it's very well orchestrated and composed and creepy and atmospheric. You know, I think the presentation of this game is really good for what it's trying to do. It's trying to set out and create this kind of uneasy atmosphere, and they nail that. The voice acting in this is like hit or miss. They're all very English or, you know, Welsh or Irish or Scottish, you know, basically from the British Isles. But a lot of the dialogue is just like grunting, you know, like whenever somebody sees something, they just kind of like, There's like minutes that dialogue just sound like that. And that's really annoying. That's so annoying. Also, for anybody that's played this, if you've watched any of the reviews, they'll tell you the combat is super clunky. And it is. The combat is very clunky in this, and landing a hit is quite difficult. I mean, really difficult. Luckily, you can just run by most of the enemies in this game. Sometimes you get pinned in an arena and they won't let you leave till you kill the enemy, or you have to fight a boss or whatever. And it's annoying and hard and frustrating. We know all that. But most of the enemies, as you're just kind of exploring around the levels, you just run right by them. And there's only enemies half the time. The other half of the time, you're just really exploring. Also, every time you open a flipping door in this game, there's a loading screen. And they last, I don't know, man, 5, 6, 7 seconds. But considering you open about 5 million doors in the game, this adds up a lot. Also, the puzzles and the scavenger hunting can be really obtuse. And it can be really tricky to figure out just, you know, where you're supposed to flip and be going and what you're supposed to do. You know, I resulted in having to use a walkthrough for a lot of this game, and I hate doing that. But every time I looked at the walkthrough, I was like, yep, never would have figured that out. Like, there's no chance I would have figured it out. There's also crap in this game where, like, clues will lead you to a trap. like Brown the dog will lead you to the wrong location on purpose to mess you up. And like the only way to really succeed is to know that's going to happen. So I guess you're supposed to like go through these 30-minute scavenger hunt sequences knowing that like step number 9 out of 10 is a trap, and you're supposed to randomly walk the other direction and go through a door, you know, to go the right way. And if you don't, you just die, and then you lose your progress, and you have to, you know, open your load and save game and do the 30-minute scavenger hunt again. That's really flippin' annoying. That is really, really, really annoying. And, you know, there's esoteric stuff like check a random box that doesn't stand out in the environment for no reason to find a, you know, a rabbit's foot that is the search item that your dog's supposed to use. Like, in a random room on the other side of the map. Like, oh, it's so irritating. I would say if you're going to play this game, use a guide. I don't really know how in the world you would ever finish this game without like blindly wandering around for like 300 hours and trying to write your own guide and map to the game. I just don't understand how you can do it. I don't know how it's possible. It's just too obtuse. It really is. You know, I wish I could say that this game is a hidden gem. I really do. But it's just not very fun to play, and I really had to kind of like force myself through it. Every day I had to say to myself, like, before I play any other game that I'm really enjoying, I'm going to sit down and play Rule of Rose. I'm going to do like one chapter, or I'm going to at least play for 1 hour. And that was a challenge. It was a struggle. You know, the game is slightly disturbing. It has some sort of disturbing cutscenes. Nothing's ultra gruesome or gory, but it's just kind of off-putting. And, you know, it is. That's a good way to put it. It has an off-putting vibe to it. The children are really cruel, and their whole existence kind of centers around, like, ostracizing, bullying, and torturing each other, which is, you know, a father of 2 daughters. I don't like that. I didn't like to see it. To add to the frustration, the game has one of the slowest... It has some of the slowest pacing I've ever seen in a game. It's just like it trudges through the mud slowly and draws everything out so that you know, disgusting off-puttedness that I mentioned, like, really wears on you. And, you know that coupled with, like, that foreboding and heavy atmosphere makes it a really challenging play. On top of that, the whole freaking story is told out of order. It takes place over, like, 12 months, and you'll play, like, June, and then you'll play December, and then you'll play February, and then you'll play October, and a lot of it is, like, disjointed and doesn't really seem to work together, and it's kind of hard to figure out what's going on, and it's just incoherent a lot of the time. So Rule of Rose, in the end, I don't know how I would rate this. It's hard. The game definitely made me feel something, you know, that I've never really experienced in another game before, but it wasn't really a feeling that, like, I enjoyed or wanted to experience again. I think of, like, these movies you see, the two that just pop into my mind are Children of Men, and then that Charlize Theron movie, Monster, where you watch it and you're like, okay, this is undoubtedly a great movie. I get it. It's well directed. It's well acted. The story has something to say. But after you're done watching, you're like, I never want to see that again. Like, it's a one and done. To me, Rule of Rose is like that. It's a one and done game. Ultra heavy hitter Rule of Rose? Is it worth playing? Yes. If you're like a video game aficionado, or like a survival horror fan, or you're just into the history of video games, I feel like this is something you have to play. But I doubt you're going to enjoy it. I watched some walkthroughs of some areas I got stuck in online, and there were some people that played it and, like, really enjoyed this game. I don't get it. Like, I don't get it. Maybe if you just thrive on, like, awkwardness and weirdness, then, you know, that it's more suited to you. But for me, like I said, the father of 2 daughters and a survival horror fan, like a self-proclaimed survival horror fan, it didn't feel like much like a survival horror game. It was just like a scavenger hunt in, like, a gross area. So I would give Rule of Rose a 6 out of 10. It's okay. The gameplay is frustrating and kind of bad. The gameplay is like a 4. The artistic merit of the game, like the concept for it, and the presentation, like the graphics and the sound design, are like an 8. So it averages out to about a 6. And that's what I'm coming up with kind of on the spot. But I feel like that's accurate. Is it worth $700? To play it? No. Absolutely not. You can get more fun buying Slay the Spire for $7. Like, it's 1,000 times more fun than this. Is it worth it for an investment? I don't know. But maybe it's worth it for, like, a conversation piece. I keep this, like, separated from the PS2 games on a little shelf where like a display area, and people walk in and they're like, oh my gosh, Rule of Rose, and they want to talk about it. So now I can actually say I've played it. As frustrating as it was, you need a guide for this game. I don't know how you get through without it. So, Rule of Rose, 6 out of 10. It's okay. Gold star game. I kind of feel bad wasting my gold star for this game, but I feel good having it off the backlog. Well, that was the main event. We have one game left. I put it at the end because I figured nobody'd want to see it. It's a sports game. Like I mentioned earlier when I talked about Arena Maze of Death, I bought like almost a complete Game Gear collection from a woman who needed some money and was getting out of game collecting. I split it with my friend. Anyway, whenever you do that, you end up with stuff like this. This is NBA Action on the Game Gear. There we go, focus. Yeah, focus. Focus. That's what I tell my students. Focus. So the full title of this is NBA Action 95 starring David Robinson. Okay, cool. It's a basketball game, obviously. It does have all 27 NBA teams, you know, from the time period with the real rosters, and it's 5-on-5. And this game's also on the Genesis, which I imagine is probably the better way to play it. As for the story, it's basketball. You play basketball. You dribble the ball up and down the court, and you try to make field goals. Right, you score baskets. You basket scoreball. I like basketball, guys. I attend a fair number of basketball games every year, and I do enjoy it. But I don't really like video game basketball too much. You know, it plays just like most other basketball games, but the controls are super clunky, as you can imagine, on the Game Gear. And they do take a little bit of getting used to. Passing in this game was really hard. You don't, like in most games, to pass, you hold down the direction you want to pass and press the pass button. In this game, you don't do that. You hold the direction and then you gingerly tap the pass button. If you don't, your character will just like hurl the ball across the entire court like a rocket at 70 miles an hour, and nobody will catch it, and you'll get flagged for out of bounds. I don't even know. You know, man, what would say about this game? It's almost impossible to see what you're doing. It's almost impossible to see what's going on. I have no idea how anybody ever played this on the Game Gear. Like on a real Game Gear screen, the terrible Game Gear screen. How? But, you know, you see me playing it here on an emulator. That's totally fine, but it is not. It doesn't look good even there. You know, and I applaud the makers. I guess Sega made this, right? It's one of those Sega sports games. I applaud them for trying to make a real basketball sim game. You know, with trades and everything, like you could trade your players, and putting it on the Game Gear, good for them, but like, this game just does not hold up, and there are so many other better basketball games you could play, and, you know, where your time could be better spent. You know, I guess if you like David Robinson, if you're a big fan of that, like, time period from the early 90s basketball, but like, man, Jordan played then. Like, what? Like, you're like, oh, I love David Robinson. Let's forget about Michael Jordan. Whatever. But, so, like, it's a sports game, right? I try not to have these in the collection. I try to curate it a little bit, but sometimes they work their way in, so. NBA Action, it's like a 4 out of 10. It's not that fun. It looks bad. It's hard to play. What can you say, man? It's basketball on the Game Gear. Well, guys, thanks for sticking around this long. It's 7 more games off the backlog. Feels good to be done with them. I'm working through a few more right now. They're kind of taking me a bit longer than they usually do, but I was glad to get these out of the way. Thanks so much for staying if you stayed this long. If you haven't already and you liked the video, please subscribe. Like I said, we're trying to hit those 500 subscribers in the next week or so, and I really appreciate it, guys. Hope you liked the video. Leave a comment if you want to discuss any of this stuff, and I'll catch you next time.